Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into, well, one of the most fundamental questions in literature, really.
You mean that age-old relationship,
Hmm.
writer, writing, society?
Exactly that. What is the true connection? It's
Yeah.
this constant back and forth, isn't it? How literature shapes society and how society, shapes the words back.
It really is the classic chicken and egg scenario. But for the written word, does literature just reflect the times, hold up a mirror?
Or does it actually actively sculpt things, change the conversation?
That's the core question, yeah. That's what we're exploring today.
Precisely. And for this deep dive, we're going to unpack these connections using a really insightful journal article. It's titled Let's Social Transform.
Ah, okay.
It's written by Dr. Noojilla Srinivas and several others, published back in November 2014 in Volume 2, Issue 7 of the IGLH.
Got it. Let's social transform. Sounds like it gets right to the point.
It does. Our mission here is to really explore how literature can be this powerful vehicle for social change. And we'll be putting a special focus on Dalit literature later on. Okay, looking forward to that.
Yeah, get ready. You might find some surprising insights into how words can genuinely change worlds.
So to really grasp that transformative power, the article first takes us back to basics, right? The definition of literature itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating how the Western and Indian views kind of diverge.
How so? What's the Western take, generally?
Well, historically in the West, literature could mean, pretty much all written language, super broad.
Okay, like anything written down.
Kind of. But more formally, the article points out it's about writings where the expression and the form are really key.
Ah, so how it's said matters just as much as the ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And connection with ideas that are seen as having like permanent and universal interest. Think poetry, romance, history, biography, essays, that whole range.
Right, so craft and big ideas aiming for something lasting. But the Indian perspective, you said it diverges.
It does. And this is where you see a really interesting difference in maybe inherent purpose. The equivalent term in India is sahityam.
Sahityam. And its etymology, the article explains, is hithena sahitam sahityam.
Hithena sahitam asahityam. What does that mean?
It basically translates to literature contains hitham. And hitham means betterment, goodness, or welfare.
Wow. Okay. So it's built right into the word itself.
Fundamentally, yes. It implies the whole point of literary work is to benefit society, or at least act as an agent for its betterment.
That's a really powerful distinction from the get-go. The Indian concept embeds social purpose, like right into the definition.
Precisely. And the article notes, while a lot of early literary theory focused on poetry because, while it was dominant,
Sure.
these definitions and principles, they apply just as much to drama, short stories, novels, literary essays, the whole spectrum.
Okay, so that foundational difference sets the stage. Literature isn't just art for art's sake, maybe. It has a role.
Exactly. The article sees literature as the artistic form of human life and argues a writer's work is never really purposeless.
And that idea, literature having a purpose, it's been debated for centuries, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How did some of the big thinkers view the writer's role?
Well, the article brings up Maxim Gorky's idea,
Mm-hmm.
that three people build the culture, the scientist, the artist, and the worker.
Right. And the artist includes the literary writer.
Exactly. So writers are partners in building culture, though, of course, their work is always shaped by their specific time, their social system.
It's tied to its context. Makes sense. What about someone like Aristotle?
Aristotle. In his Poetics, he saw literature as true, serious, and useful. He even said a poet is like a painter, an imitator.
An imitator of what?
Of things as they are or were, or as people say they were, or even as they ought to be in society.
Okay, so that's a very direct link, reflecting reality or maybe even shaping the ideal.
A very clear link, yeah. And that defensive purpose carries on. Philip Sidney, for instance, in his An Apology for Poetry, he argued imaginative literature is justified if it communicates truths, historical, philosophical, moral truths, but in a lively, pleasing way.
So again, not just pleasure. There's that element of instruction, of truth-telling.
Definitely. And then you get to someone like P.B. Shelley with that really powerful declaration.
Oh, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Love that line.
Exactly. Shelley really believed poetry could be a medium for social reform, promoting well-being. He saw the poet almost as a prophet, envisioning a better future.
Not just reflecting, but actively shaping values, maybe even laws.
That's the idea. And Coleridge, praising Shakespeare, he said Shakespeare held mirror to nature, human nature that is.
Right, mirroring life. mirroring society, reflecting the system of the time.
Whether it focused on the few, like in ancient times, or the many, as perhaps it does more today. The reflection and its purpose seems constant.
So looking across all these historical views, the article seems to land on this general understanding. Literature has kind of a dual purpose.
That's the takeaway. To please, yes, but also to instruct.
Please and instruct. And this dual role you mentioned, it's really clear in Telugu literature too, right from the start.
Oh, absolutely. Early Telugu writers were quite open about writing for benefit, like Arana praising Valmiki for removing animalistic natures.
Wow. Okay.
And Nanaya stated literature aims for Vishwashreya Kavyam.
Vishwashreya Kavyam, meaning
welfare of the universe.
pretty ambitious.
No kidding. Welfare of the universe. But did that always mean, like, everyone's welfare?
Well, that's the nuance. The article points out that often this universal welfare actually meant establishing or protecting the existing systems, like the Vedic and Varna systems.
Ah, okay. So maintaining the status quo in a way.
In many early cases, yes.
Yeah.
But then you get figures like Palkuriki Somana, a Shaivite poet. He kind of breaks the mold.
How so?
He wrote for the common people, using Geno Telugu, basically. Right. Simple, common Telugu. And he openly criticized the Varna system, the inequalities. That's clear social activism through writing.
That's a significant shift.
Yeah.
But did that focus on social critique last? The article suggests there was a period where maybe the focus shifted more towards physical pleasure as the main literary aim. The social perspective sort of faded for a while.
But not entirely. Were there exceptions?
Oh, yes. Some Shataka poets, they wrote those century-long verse collections, and Padakavis, the devotional songwriters, and you definitely had people's poets like Vimana, Sumathi Shatakam, Kavi Chudapa. They were still criticizing society.
Right. But maybe not the mainstream focus.
Perhaps not. The article argues that the social characteristic was largely maybe forgotten or at least sidelined until Kandakuri Viraselingam Panthulu came onto the scene. He really brought it back to the forefront.
Okay, so Kandakuri reignites that social purpose. And that leads us into the 20th century, which sounds like a really dynamic time for Telugu literature.
Absolutely. A period of real ferment, lots of movements pushing boundaries. First, you had the Bhavakavitva Udyamam, the Romantic poetry movement.
Inspired by English romantics.
Yeah, poets like Davulapalli Krishna Shastri. They rejected complex, traditional poetic rules, preferring simpler forms like lyrics, kandikas.
More accessible, perhaps.
Potentially. Then came the Abhyudaya Kavifa Ujamam, the progressive poetry movement, led by the famous Sri Sri.
As their aim.
To actively bring ideologies like socialism and communism into poetry. Very politically engaged.
Okay. And then things got even more radical.
You could say that. The Digambara Kavitva Udimam, the naked poets. Figures like Chera Bandaraju, Nikoleshwar.
Naked poets? Why that name?
They wanted to strip away all hypocrisy, all pretense in traditional poetry. They used raw colloquial language, sometimes even vulgar terms, to shock the literary establishment and expose what they saw as societal lies.
Wow. Quite confrontational.
Very. And this intense period leads us right to a crucial point for our discussion today. The article highlights the simultaneous emergence of the feminist and Dalit movements in the 1980s.
Right, emerging together. Why then?
The suggestion is they filled a kind of void. Earlier progressive or revolutionary movements hadn't fully managed to accommodate their specific diverse voices and concerns.
So they needed their own space, their own movements within literature.
Exactly. Feminist poetry focused on women's identity, their issues. And Dalit poetry gave this incredibly powerful voice to communities historically pushed to the margins, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes.
And this is where Dalit literature really becomes central to understanding literature as a force for social transformation.
Precisely. It takes center stage here. At its absolute core, Dalit literature is about the socially underprivileged. It's a profound assertion of their socio-political place, their identity, against centuries of oppression.
So it's inherently political, inherently social.
Deeply. The article mentions early novels like Mokarajanan's Untouchable touching on this place.
A classic, yeah.
But the modern Dalit movement in literature really gained force with Marathi, Gujarati, Kannada writers, often inspired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It became a kind of militant protest against upper caste Brahmanical values.
Militant protest. That sounds intense. It was much more than just a genre. It's an act of defiance.
Absolutely. It's a deliberate act of protest, of self-assertion. And artistically, it defines itself by rejecting a lot of the old norms.
How so? What does it reject?
It often disregards traditional literary forms, content, styles. It's creating something new, a vibrant expression of sensibilities that were suppressed for so long. It is fundamentally literature of protest.
Against all kinds of exploitation.
Yes, class, race, caste, occupation. And it places fundamental human rights and values right at the very top, above aesthetic rules, perhaps.
So if it rejects traditional literary frameworks, both Western and Indian, what are delete aesthetics? How does it define beauty or artistic merit?
That's a crucial question, and the answer is really distinctive. It explicitly rejects many established theories, Freudian psychoanalysis, Barthes structuralism, Derrida's deconstruction from the West, and also classical Indian theories like Rasa and Dwani. Instead, it aims to build its own aesthetic framework.
Rooted in what?
Rooted in authenticity, in lived experience, in the direct, often raw, often confrontational expression of their consciousness, their history, their struggle. It's almost like saying truth, the lived truth, is the beauty, more so than polished form.
That is a profound break, a complete redefinition of literary value. And does it engage with things like mythology?
Actively. It questions, it deconstructs traditional Indian mythology. Dalit writers often look for alternatives, rediscovering low-caste poets from the Bhakti tradition, finding resonance in Buddhism.
Interesting. Reclaiming different spiritual or historical strands.
And they reframe mythological figures, too. The article mentions viewing Ekalavya, the archer who sacrificed his thumb, as a forefather.
Right, Ekalavya.
And worshipping Shambhuka, another Dalit figure from the Ramayana, who was killed by Rama for essentially transgressing caste boundaries by performing penance.
So they're taking these figures of tragedy or oppression and making them symbols of their own heritage and struggle.
Exactly. Reclaiming and redefining the narrative. It's incredibly powerful.
And the language itself, does it reflect this defiant spirit?
Oh, absolutely. Authenticity, stark realism, raw liveliness, those are the hallmarks. Using native speech, dialects, drawing imagery directly from lived experience, not just observation.
So very grounded, very real.
Yes, often offering genuine, sometimes coarse, day-to-day descriptions of what untouchability and poverty actually feel like. This all feeds into what's called Dalit consciousness.
Dalit consciousness.
A deep, often painful awareness of that long history. Slavery, exclusion, subjugation, being dispossessed, oppressed.
The emotional weight must be immense.
It is. The literature is steeped in shame, anger, sorrow, but also, crucially, indomitable hope. That anger against centuries of oppression often leads to incredibly sharp, searing expressions, especially in poetry.
Understandable. And they found connections elsewhere, too.
Yes, the article notes they found real inspiration in the Black liberation movements in North America and Africa, seeing parallels, finding solidarity in that global fight for justice.
So it's both deeply rooted in Indian history and globally conscious.
Exactly. It reflects the community's anguish while forcefully demanding a just, realistic future for the marginalized.
It's clearly a vast and vital movement. Could you mention some of the key writers, maybe across India and then specifically in Telugu?
Sure. Across India, the article lists names like Mahasweta Devi, Namdeo Dasal, Dayapawar Arjundangal, Sachirotre, Rabi Singh, Basudev Sunani, and others like Bama, Prumal Murugan, Yenluri Sudhakar. It's a rich field.
And in Telugu literature, where did it really start?
The roots go back to Gurum Joshua. His poem Gabilam is seen as a landmark, a new beginning. Kusuma Dharmana, Boyi Bhimana, they're also part of that first-generation writing with Dalit consciousness.
But it really picked up steam later. You mentioned the 80s.
Yes, the 1980s were pivotal. Tragically, fueled by horrific events like the massacres of Dalits in Karamchedu and Sunduru by upper caste individuals, that period really embedded protest and an alternative vision deep within Telugu literature.
A terrible catalyst, but it galvanized the movement.
It did. And you saw symbolic acts, too, like writers from the Madika caste, part of the Dandora movement, starting to add their caste names to their surnames.
Which was usually an upper caste practice.
Exactly. It was a powerful act of reclaiming identity, asserting presence.
And who were some key figures in that second wave, emerging from the 80s onwards?
Oh, many prominent names. Kalakaluri Enoch, Siva Sagar, the Baladir Gadar, Boya Jangaya, Chilukuri Divaputra, Katipadmarao, Boja Tharakam, and Luri Sujakar, Vemula Yelaya, G. Kalyana Rao. The list goes on.
Including women writers, too.
Absolutely. Ugu Shamala, Jupaka Subhadra, Jajula Gauri, M. Vinodini, Sujata Gidla, Chalapali Swarupurani. Sikamani, and it keeps expanding.
Extending how?
The stream now includes voices from even more marginalized groups within the Dalit community, like the Relas, advocating for rights within the oppressed groups. There's even an anthology in the Reli language, Dalatulo Dalathulu, by Mangalajiri Aditya Prasad.
Wow, so it's constantly evolving, becoming more inclusive, even within its own framework. It seems so. It's a living, breathing movement. Okay, so we've traced the history, the philosophy, the key figures. Let's talk about the impact. What are the tangible results? How has Dalit literature actually transformed things?
Well, the article makes a bold claim. It says, compared to other literary movements in the last century, the Dalit literary movement has brought about a sea change in Telugu literature's content and form.
A sea change. That's significant.
It is. It argues Dalit literature has acted as a direct, fundamental vehicle for achieving profound social transformation. All its forms, poetry, songs, stories, plays, essays share that goal. Change the world, bring humanity and justice forward.
Can you give some concrete examples of this transformation? How did it play out?
Sure. The results are pretty clear. First, it directly challenged, even threatened, Brahmanic supremacy within literature itself. That's a big shift in the power dynamic of the literary world.
Okay, shaking up the establishment. What else?
It powerfully stimulated Dalit communities, encouraged assertion, protest, mobilization. It got people thinking, talking, organizing.
Fostering intellectual growth within the community.
Yes, stirring thinking among Dalit intellectuals and helping create what you might call organic intellectuals, thinkers, emerging directly from the community's experience.
And it keeps injustices in the spotlight.
Constantly. Through stories, poems, articles, it highlights atrocities against Dalits, making sure these issues aren't forgotten until there's justice. And as we discussed, it introduced that whole new set of Dalit aesthetics, challenging the old rules of literature.
Beyond the literary world, did it have other effects?
Definitely. The article suggests it motivated many poor Dalits to pursue higher education, to aim for better careers. Seeing their stories, their struggles validated in literature can be incredibly empowering.
That makes sense. A move towards socioeconomic empowerment, too.
And perhaps most crucially, it's now influencing policy.
How? Literature influencing government policy.
By bringing these issues, the nuances of discrimination, the specific needs of communities into literary and public debate, it lays theoretical groundwork. It gives policymakers context, understanding, and impetus to act.
Can you give an example?
The article mentions the recently drafted SC Subplan Expenditure Scheme. It's designed to ensure funds are exclusively used for the benefit of scheduled castes. Dalit literature, by constantly highlighting the issues and needs, plays a role in creating the environment where such targeted policies become possible, even necessary.
So it's not just raising awareness, it's actually feeding into the creation of legal and financial frameworks for change.
Exactly. At the end of the day, the article presents Dalit literature as powerful proof that literature's primary purpose can indeed be, and in this case is, profound social transformation.
It's an incredibly compelling case. We've gone from these broad definitions of literature, East and West, explored its historical purpose, and then really drilled down into how Dalit literature exemplifies that role as a catalyst for change.
It shows how words aren't just for entertainment or reflection. They can actively challenge, they can enlighten, and ultimately they can help reshape society.
It really underscores that literature isn't static, is it? It's this dynamic force, constantly interacting with human experience and social structures.
Absolutely. It evolves with us, and it helps us evolve.
So as you, our listeners, reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider what other voices are out there. Voices perhaps traditionally unheard or pushed to the margins that might be shaping our understanding of society through literature right now.
That's a great question. Who else is using words to push for change?
And think about the role literature, especially this kind of literature of protest and transformation, plays in our world today. How important is it? And how can we, maybe as readers, as listeners, continue to champion and amplify those voices that are pushing for a more just, a more realistic future for everyone? Something to think about.